Welcome to the latest Fowler Welsh Industry Insight, where we ask experts about trends and issues affecting retail, food production and logistics.
British Growers is a grower-led and grower-owned organisation. It was set up to provide administrative and support services to organisations which operate across the fresh produce industry, and we currently look after 20 different organisations. We provide the backup and administrative support which enables these organisations to operate. So in effect what it means is that the growers can turn up. They don't have to deal with all the back office operation. They can come together, do the business they need to do, go away again, and all the other bits are left to us to tidy up. The way to sum up the size of the UK horticultural industry, I think, is to think of it in terms of the whole UK food industry. Now, the UK food industry is the country's largest manufacturing sector. Its value is about 100 billion. That makes it bigger than both the car and the aero industries put together. It also provides 1 in 7 of every jobs in the UK, so it's a massive, massive industry. And UK horticulture is one part, it's a really important part of the food chain, along with logistics, the packing industry, the supply industry into the various other components, the processing sector and the retail sector. But you put the whole lot together, and as I say, it is the UK's biggest industry. Let me start with my hopes for the next 12 months, and that is that we see the introduction of a little bit of sanity into the turf war that's currently taking place amongst the retailers, and this absolute focus on price. Because what we're seeing is some unsustainable pricing, and in order to make sure that we continue to invest and innovate within the industry, we do need to see margins for growers restored. We've also got the whole issue of Brexit, and irrespective of where you stand, one kind of has to think that even irrespective of the outcome, there's going to be quite a lot of change coming off the back of that. But I think probably the most important thing for growers is that we're probably going to see another year of some quite difficult challenges, but the industry is very resilient. It's very good at what it does. It's very good at innovating. It's got some great technical skills. And I think the hope, and certainly my expectation, is its innate ability to be resilient and survive will carry it through the next 12 months. An indication of UK horticulture's excellence is its ability to put fresh produce on the shelves 364 days of the year and at the same time beat off the global competition. And that is only possible by some great businesses that we've got in the UK, great innovation, great attention to detail, and the will to succeed within those businesses. And one of the main challenges is maintaining the margins within the sector. We're in a situation now where we've got a bit of a turf war going on with the retailers, and that means that they're all fighting for market share and using price as their main weapon for doing that. And so at the moment, margins are under pressure. But there are a number of other things also on the horizon. We've seen the introduction of the living wage, which comes in very shortly. Now, the industry itself is not against the principle of the living wage, but we've been left with a very, very short timescale in which to prepare for the living wage. And it's proving extremely difficult to try and recoup those additional costs from the marketplace. Combating pests and diseases is a major issue for the industry. Crop management and crop protection is high up the industry's agenda because we're seeing a gradual erosion of the products that we can use. There's some real opportunities here. The introduction of robotics, I think, is one of the exciting areas for the industry. And although it's some way off, I know there is a lot of interest from growers and grower groups about accelerating robotics back into the industry. Plant breeding, plant genetics, this is about opening up new opportunities for growers, new varieties with different characteristics, and also offering consumers something different. Well, the retailers get an interesting press within the farming industry. And I think we come across examples of some really good practice, and from time to time, we come across some examples of situations where, frankly, I think the retailers could do things a little better. And that's one of the areas where the Grocery Code Adjudicator, has done a very good job in rooting out some of these practices and helping to introduce a culture which is more about getting a balanced and equitable deal for producers, which is really important. But in terms of things that we could do more effectively together, I think it's about working together. We have a common goal in terms of delivering high quality, good value produce to the consumer. And there's much more to be gained by working together than there is working against each other. When you're producing fresh produce, ideally we would be able to produce exactly the same product year in, year out. But obviously it's influenced by the weather. You get different weather conditions each year, and ultimately that affects what you're producing. Now, I think where the supermarkets could really help is being a little bit more flexible. When you get particular growing conditions, you may get a flush of a product, or it might be a slightly different spec, and just that little bit more flexibility to allow more produce to get onto the supermarket shelves. That would be a really good move. Growers are always looking for new opportunities within the market, and I think one of the areas that they're keen to exploit is the opportunities at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season. And one example is apples. I think there is a wish from the UK retailers to have a UK apple offering on the shelves 12 months a year. So the race is now on to try and find a variety that we can harvest in the autumn and will then keep and give a really, really good eating quality apple through the months of May, June, July. Until the UK harvest starts again. But we're also seeing examples of strawberries where they're continuously stretching the season. We're beginning to see it come through a bit in asparagus. And it's really a question of, what can you do that nobody else can do that will give you that edge in the market? And in order to do that, we're reliant on plant breeders, good genetics, a lot of science, developing technologies. So it's very much a combined effort across a range of disciplines to give growers those new opportunities and also to give consumers new products on the supermarket shelves. Climate change is a much debated subject, not just in the industry, but obviously more widely. But you can't escape the fact that we're seeing some very changeable weather patterns. Last year is a good case in point. We started with a fairly long, cold spring, and then we ended up with an uncharacteristic and unseasonably warm spell at the end. And so this kind of brings opportunities as well as challenges. We've seen, for example, in the berry industry, in order to cope with the variabilities of the weather, more berry production going into protected environments. And that's actually enabled them to lengthen the season. So whereas 20 years ago, our strawberry season traditionally centred around Wimbledon and a couple of months either side, now we've got to a situation where the first strawberries will be in the shops in early spring, and we will be able to sustain that UK production right through until the late autumn. So it's a really good example. And also within that, it's introduced new opportunity for crop management techniques. So that's a really good example of where an industry has responded to challenges of climate change. And then we've got another example where we've got one of the French champagne houses has actually bought a farm in East Kent because it wants to start growing grapes probably 300 miles north of the traditional champagne growing territory, largely because of a slight change in climate. On the other side of the coin, what we are seeing is sort of different range of pests and diseases because of the slight change in weather conditions. And so, yeah, it does bring opportunities and it also brings challenges.